The FDA continues to push to convince the DEA to make Kratom a Schedule I drug. But now a new white paper concludes that the FDA's research is nothing more than junk science. Let's give it a reality check.
Reality Check with Ben Swann, powered by Smart Cash.
FDA fails to follow the science on Kratom. That is the name of the new white paper published in late August and written by Jane Babin, a lawyer and PhD in molecular biology. The report eviscerates the scientific process the FDA used to conclude that Kratom is a health risk. Now, before we get into that, let's talk about what Kratom actually is. See, Kratom is a tropical tree in the coffee family. It is commonly used in raw plant form, with the dried leaves used to make tea or crushed and mixed with food. Indigenous to Southeast Asia, the plant has become popular in the U.S. as a natural medicine. How popular is it? Well, actually, between 3 and 5 million people take it for chronic pain, alcohol addiction, weaning off of opiates, depression, anxiety, PTSD, and more. Now, the FDA says that Kratom is actually just as dangerous as opioids. In fact, in November, the FDA commissioner recommended that Kratom be scheduled as a Schedule I drug, meaning that it's highly addictive and it has no proven medical value. In addition, the FDA claims that Kratom is responsible for 44 deaths. Now, as I previously reported, 9 leading scientists in substance addiction and safety wrote to the White House opioid crisis team leader, Kellyanne Conway, and the acting DEA administrator, Robert Pattison. They encourage both to disregard the FDA's claims about Kratom, pointing out serious flaws in the agency's claims. Quote, "The scientists warned that 4 surveys indicate that Kratom is presently serving as a lifeline away from strong, often dangerous opioids for many of the several million Americans who use Kratom. A ban on Kratom would be imposed by CSA scheduling, and it would put them at risk of relapse to opioid use with potential consequence of overdose death. Similar unintended consequences are to be expected in some who would be forced to use opioids to manage acute or chronic pain." Now, these scientists went on to challenge the claims by the FDA by pointing out that available science is clear that Kratom, although having effects on opioid receptors in the brain, is distinct from classical opioids like morphine, heroin, and oxycodone in its chemistry, biology, effects, and origin. See, Kratom is not poppy-based. It is a tree in the coffee family, and therefore it has a reportedly milder euphoric effect than traditional opioids or opiates. Well, now comes this white paper saying that beyond the medical reports, the science used by the FDA to determine that Kratom is dangerous is just junk science. Quote, "The FDA has relied on a strategy of manipulating, obscuring, and ignoring science in its inexplicable zeal to impede public access to the natural botanical Kratom," writes Babin. Quote, "This was clearly an unprofessional review, riddled with significant credibility issues." Well, as I told you in February, the FDA claimed that 44 deaths resulted directly from Kratom, and yet virtually every one of those cases had multiple other factors. One case the FDA listed as a Kratom-related death, which had been completely redacted in the document, appears elsewhere in an agency database as a death by homicide due to a gunshot wound to the chest. So what you need to know is that the FDA and what they're recommending is exactly the opposite of the agency's charge. There is no evidence that Kratom on its own is harming anyone. The science being used by the agency does not show that. Instead, clearly, the FDA is pushing for the substance to be banned. Now, keep in mind, I can't tell you why the FDA would do that, but I have reported before on the massive influence of Big Pharma over the FDA and its decision makers. Is that happening here? Well, I can't say for sure, but I can leave you with this. Even if the 44 deaths related to Kratom were accurate, and they're not, 44 out of 5 million users is a far safer drug than many approved prescription drugs, which kill over 15,000 people in the United States every year. And yet there is no effort by the FDA to ban or recall those drugs. That's Reality Check. Let's talk about that right now on social media.